Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending our 2020 Exhibit Columbus Symposium New Middles and our Columbus conversation today. My name is Ann Surak, and I'm the Director of Exhibit Columbus. For those of you joining us for the first time or those new to our work, Exhibit Columbus is a program of the Landmark Columbus Foundation whose mission is to care for, celebrate, and advance the cultural heritage of Columbus, Indiana. Exhibit Columbus creates a 2-year cycle of programming that activates the design legacy of Columbus through symposia and free public exhibitions. Our 2020 symposium begins our 3rd cycle of events and asks international leaders in architecture, art, and design, together with stakeholders in our community, to consider the question, what is the future of the Middle City? This is the 4th in a series of 8 live streamed and recorded online conversations and is centered around the topic resiliency and climate adaptation. Over the next month, we will continue exploring 2 other topics in this format: Tuesday thematic conversations hosted by our media partner Dezeen, and Thursday Columbus conversations hosted by Exhibit Columbus through Zoom and Facebook Live. Please visit our website exhibitcolumbus.org for our upcoming schedule of events and the archive of talks already presented. We also invite you to join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using hashtags New Middles and Exhibit Columbus and following us at Exhibit Columbus. Our conversation today will be moderated by Janice Shimizu. Janice has been a valued part of the Exhibit Columbus team since our program began. She is not only the Associate Curator for Exhibit Columbus, she's also an architect, a partner at Shimizu plus Coggeshall Architects, and is an assistant professor at Ball State University. Janice describes her work and the project she takes on as coming from an interest in the exploration of design processes, the construction of architecture, and their ability to have consequence in the world. With that said, she brings incredible thoughtfulness to our program, and we're very lucky to have her as part of our team. Thanks, Janice, for being here and moderating today.
Thanks, Anne. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the long history of a city named for Christopher Columbus in a state named for Indians. The land where Columbus, Indiana is located was ceded to the United States in 1818 through the Treaty of St. Mary's. Yet this place has been a site of human activity for more than 12,000 years through the rich and vibrant cultures of the Adena, Hopewell, Cahokia, Shawnee, Miami, Kickapoo, and Delaware nations. We recognize that the languages, cultures, and traditions of these nations continue to this day, and although we are gathering virtually, we remain entwined by land, water, and soil. So the conversation today is a dialogue about our past and future relationship with the ecology and resiliency of the Midwest, and features Miller Prize recipients Belinda Tato and Jose Luis Vallejo of Ecosistema Urbano, Rachel Kavathe of Loci Creative, and Heather Pope, Director of Redevelopment for the City of Columbus, with Randy Royer and Jason Larrison. Our Exhibit Columbus co-curators, Mimi Zeiger and Iker Gill, use the model of the Mississippi watershed to suggest interconnections, ecological strategies, and also how what happens in a place like Columbus, Indiana, might resonate in all places. On Tuesday, Kate Orff and Iñaki Alday did a great job unpacking this week's theme, resiliency and climate adaptation. Today, our guests will continue that exploration with 3 short presentations, and then we'll follow up with a conversation about design's role in creating resilient cities and possible futures for the middle. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat function or leave a comment in Facebook. So now I'd like to introduce the project team for the Columbus Riverfront project. Heather Pope has served as the Director of Redevelopment since 2012, but she has been with the City of Columbus since 1996. Heather, a lifelong resident of Bartholomew County, is active on numerous community boards and works with multiple city and county commissions. Randy Royer is a landscape architect and senior principal with Hitchcock Design Group. He provides leadership within the Indianapolis Design Studio. Randy calls Columbus home and serves as a board member for the Columbus, Indiana Architectural Archives. Randy and his daughter Josie were part of the high school team for our first Exhibit Columbus. Jason Larrison grew up in Columbus, attended Ball State University, and is a registered architect. He now serves on the City County Council of Indianapolis's District 12 and works as the Senior Project Manager of Business Development for Core Planning Strategies. Thank you all, welcome, and I believe Heather's going to kick us off, right?
Yes, thank you. I want to take this time to thank Anne and Janice and the Landmark Columbus team for inviting us to be part of this program. So what I want to do, my part of the presentation today is just to give you a little bit of history about our riverfront. And then Randy's going to tell you how the community responded and what it would like to see on our riverfront. And then Jason's going to go into the regulatory side of things. So first and foremost, Columbus is no different than other communities, and our rivers have been a forgotten resource, and you'll see a lot of communities that are now turning their focus back to the rivers. And so what I'm going to do is as I go through this, Jason's going to just scroll through some images of our riverfront. The pump house, which you see here on this image in the lower right-hand corner, was built in 1903 by architect Harrison Albright. In the first half of the 1900s, it was the city's waterworks department. It pumped water for domestic use and electricity for city street lights. And then in 1976, it was renovated into the city's senior center. Most recently, in 2016, it was redeveloped into the Upland Brewing Company, most affectionately referred to as still the pump house for all of us locals. The rivers and their banks were the dumping grounds for many municipalities, as you see here on the left-hand side. And Columbus was no different. However, as Columbus grew, we closed the landfill, capped it off. We built Millrace Park, which is north of our site here. And Millrace Park is an 83-acre downtown city park. It is built at the confluence of the Driftwood and East Fork of the river. Also, Columbus started building a wonderful trail system. We have over 26 miles of trail, and the gap along the river is the piece that is missing that connects all of it. When we looked at this about creating a safe connection, we noticed that the dam was in terrible shape. You can see it here. It's failing. It is eroding. It also is unhealthy to the ecological system out there. But however, despite its ugly and gnarliness, people are still very much attracted to the river and find themselves out there fishing off of it, picnicking and things like that. So we thought, how can we make a safe trail connection and also provide an area where no matter your ability, you can access our river. And so we started looking at the removal of the dam, ensuring that the dam doesn't continue to go into our Superfund site, which I talked to you about, the dam or the dumping grounds, and how can we protect this area and provide an ecological improvement to our river. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Randy.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit about the design drivers. When the city engaged Hitchcock Design Group and our team of engineers, they were really focused on the safety, maintenance, repair, and ecology of the river, things that Heather just mentioned. But from a safety standpoint, the dam was failing. It's also causes some severe undertows and has been referred to as a drowning machine by the IDNR. And being able to actually provide a safe pedestrian route was really a key component as well. But then also access for the safety personnel within the city, because right now there's not a good way to get to the riverfront. So we obviously we're looking at those issues. And then from a maintenance and repair standpoint, on the west bank of the river, we have the old city dump that has been capped. And on the east side of the river, there's a active sanitary sewer line that is actually exposed at this point. And the city wanted to make sure that those areas were protected. And then from an ecological standpoint, the Lowhead Dam just stopped any kind of sediment transportation or fish passage, as well as caused some other issues. So as we got into the design of the project, and we had quite a bit, a pretty extensive public outreach process, a number of other things came about, and including economic and workforce development, connections, compelling attractions, and this being the front door of the community needed to look good. So this is a plan view of the project, and what you see from the right, which is what's considered Second Street Bridge, there's a trail connection that goes under the bridge and goes through to the Third Street Bridge, and there's a plaza space on what's close to the Third Street underpass. And then so we were able to create that safety connection or safe connection for pedestrians. But then within the river, when the dam was removed, we needed to be able to hold the water up so we don't dry out the wetlands that are north of this area. But we wanted to restore all the habitat or recreate habitat that had been lost. So on one half of the river, which is as you're looking at it's on the right-hand side of the screen. That's more going to be a rock riffle that will allow fish passage and sediment transportation. And on the left-hand side is a kayak run. It's a recreational channel that we've created. And that really came about through conversations in the community with a number of the companies that were saying, we really want to be able to retain millennials, and we want to create, we need to create things within the community that will make people want to stay. So what you see here is a view from the People Trail connection that would look out across the river. The west side, we'll protect that bank and it'll be revegetated and just be green. The east side of the river is where we're going to be doing most of the reconstruction and protecting. You can see there's a pretty significant retaining wall along there. That's actually protecting the old sewer line that's exposed at this point. So we'll have to be protecting that. So I've got a couple of dogs in here that have just showed up to join the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jason to talk about the regulatory side of things.
Thanks, Randy. So as anyone who's worked with waterways in the United States knows, you have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that are very interested in the impact that work has in the river. But along with that, we have the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, which is interested in a couple different things, both in the quality of the water and the land that surrounds it, but also the habitat and the impact that's made whenever work is done in the river. The desire of the state would be to remove the dam. Indiana has 100 plus dams blocking passageway for ecology. So the solution that we've been looking at, that Hitchcock Group has provides that connectivity up and downstream, while also allowing for some of the recreational components, allowing people to come to the water. This is for Indiana, this is a new solution, which creates some challenges in working through the regulatory process, which by its nature is generally conservative and doesn't have a ton of flexibility. So what we're looking at is how we convince the state and the regulatory authorities that connecting this river to today's environment, to today's urban environment, while still protecting the ecology can occur, versus just thinking of the river in a static way like it was 100 years ago.
And with that, we'll turn it back over to Janice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys so much. It's great. Great teamwork. I know you guys have been working together for a while now. And I appreciate the many facets of this project. I was actually in Columbus last week and walked along the river to Millrace Park, and I mean, it's going to be great. I'm really excited what this can bring to the area. So thank you. Jason, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing then. And next, I'd like to introduce Rachel Kavathe. Rachel is an artist, landscape architect, and city planner. Her work focuses on site-specific art installations, place-based master planning, and public space design. She founded Loci Creative in 2015 and relocated her art and design studio to Columbus in 2017. Rachel is an adjunct professor at Ball State's College of Architecture and Planning and is a founding member of Columbus Friends of Pollinator Parks movement. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Janice. I'll go ahead and share my screen here.
Okay.
I'd like to just share with you all a little bit today about our Friends of Pollinator Parks movement that's happening in Columbus. Starting back at the beginning a few years ago, this project really originated at a site just a little bit upstream of the project you just heard Randy and Heather and Jason talk about, at some land that was really hit hard by a flood we had in Columbus in 2008. And as at the time we were approaching the 10-year anniversary of the flood, we wanted to look at some of the land that was hit hardest by the flood and some of these vacant properties that have been underutilized for the last decade or so. We had an event to mark the 10-year anniversary of the flood where we planted some trees. This is just a shot from the newspaper article about that event. And it really, I think, helped the community to not only see the resiliency in the environment that had taken place, but also the resiliency in the neighborhood and the community as a whole over the 10-year period. We continue to really gain momentum about how we could rethink using this underutilized land. And, you know, we started out small, a group of volunteers, and we actually just went out with some shovels and got our hands dirty and looked at planting some patches of native plants and thinking about how we could grow this space into an amenity for the neighborhood, but also a way to really create more biodiversity within our downtown Columbus area. At the time, I was also teaching a course at Ball State with some landscape architecture and urban planning students. So we took the opportunity to look at some of these properties as well in the Pleasant Grove neighborhood of Columbus and really help to envision what this space could be. It's in the floodplain, so there's limited amounts of ways that the land can be utilized. But I think the students really helped the community to think outside of the box and envision some new ways to use the space and really start to get excited about the possibilities. So I worked with the City Parks Department, City of Columbus, and various other organizations that have become a part of this pollinator park movement to create a plan. We also work closely with the surrounding neighborhood to create something that they would enjoy in a space that they could use as a natural recreation area with a path system that where they could appreciate native plantings and also create a space that could be an educational opportunity. We've talked with many in the community at the local universities and elementary schools and high schools about ways that they could use this space to educate and learn about native plantings and our native plants and animals and biodiversity. Just to show you the location, you know, like many of our Midwestern cities, we have a lot of land that is near waterways. You know, our cities developed along the waterways. And so when these areas flood and become, you know, areas that can't be as utilized maybe as they once were, we have to rethink how we can use these and using them in ways that can benefit the environment and can increase our biodiversity, but also become important connections to the surrounding uses. This site in particular has a lot of uses surrounding it in terms of employment centers, the Foundation for Youth, neighborhoods, and connects to our people trail system. So as we're continuing to fundraise for that particular site, we wanted to keep the momentum going with our growing group of volunteers in the community who are, you know, passionate about creating spaces in our communities, in our parks, in our neighborhoods for increasing biodiversity. So this is our second location at Blackwell Park in Columbus, where we galvanized a group of volunteers over last year to put in over 1,000 new native plants that we had donated from the state nursery. We also worked to cut back the amount of invasives that were in the existing parts of the lands. And this was really not only an opportunity to improve the environment there, but to create these volunteer opportunities where people could connect, learn from each other about the plants and about how to create these types of ecosystems in even their own neighborhoods and their own yards, which has been really exciting to see the connections that are being made in the community. So this site, Blackwell Park in Columbus, we've continued to work on, and we received a grant from the state that allowed us to put in some new signage. We developed some educational signage, so when people visit the space, they know that this is a pollinator park, and they learn about what that means and why that's important. They can also learn about the local flora and fauna that they'll see in the space. And more importantly, how they can, use some of these things that they've learned about this park and recreate them in their own yards, in their own neighborhood. And really, we hope to inspire people about how they can do this in their own spaces. One question that we get a lot is, I love this in the park. How can I do this in my yard? Where do I get these plants? What do I do? How do I do it? So this, these questions that kept coming up in the neighborhood gave us an opportunity to really think about how we could create more of a resource and an information hub for the community. Through the Exhibit Columbus exhibit installation last year at the library, we were able to partner up with that, and that really helped launch our seed library at the library. So this was a really great opportunity where we had groups of volunteers come out and actually collect the seed from the plants that were in the installation. And those went to the library to help get started the seed library, which is a free resource to anyone in the community who wants to come in and take free seeds. So they can learn about these native plant seeds and how to grow them in their own yard, in addition to many other types of seeds for growing gardens and those types of things in their yard. So this is another fun way that we've been able to really connect the resources in the community. And there's a growing network of people who are interested in this, and there's already a wealth of knowledge of gardeners and activists and environmentalists in the community that have really stepped forward and volunteered to help others learn more about it. And so it's been great to see that network kind of grow. So really, more than any just one location, that has become a pollinator park, I really see this as a movement where, it's a network of people who are interested in using the land around us, not only public spaces, but private spaces in their own yards, to create more biodiversity. And we have a Facebook group, and here's some posts from that where you can see people just helping to inspire each other and get excited and sharing what they're seeing in these spaces in our parks, and the wildlife that they're spotting, and how they're getting excited about learning about seeing biodiversity in our city. So it's been really exciting, and I'm excited to see where this movement takes us. And our goal is to continue to grow our presence in the area parks and in people's yards as well.
Great. Rachel, thank you so much. And it's so good to see how it started, just as a single park, and it's grown, and I think you networks, but making these connections between so many different people and your students. But especially now, it feels like a network of landscapes, right, that connect Columbus. And I love seeing the plants from Frida Escobedo's project, being resilient and having a new site. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so finally, I'd like to introduce Belinda Tato and Jose Luis Vallejo of Ecosistema Urbano. Belinda is an associate professor in practice of landscape architecture at Harvard University's Graduate School of Design. And Jose is an associate professor at Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. Founded in 2000, Ecosistema Urbano is a design and consulting company operating within the fields of urbanism, architecture, engineering, and sociology, with offices in Madrid and Miami. They define their approach as urban social design, by which they understand environments, spaces, and dynamics in order to improve self-organization of citizens, social interaction within communities, and the relationship with the environment. And Ecosistema's work ranges from 52 acres of public space for Malaga University to the design of a carousel that stores its own kinetic energy. And the work shares a drive for democratic spaces, innovative technology, and remembers the importance of play within beautiful structures and sites. And I've loved their work for many years, so I'm thrilled that they are participating in Exhibit Columbus as Miller Prize recipients. Welcome, Belinda and Jose.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna be sharing a screen.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you can see our screen, right? Okay, thank you so much for the introduction and thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. We're delighted. So we had the opportunity over these years, over the last 20 years, to work in different environments in different cities around the world. So we very much appreciate the context and to learn from both the social, the environmental, and the economic context that we've been working on. So these are the three main pillars in which we base our practice. So the first one is about the environmental. So some of our projects are addressing the climatic comfort to create a kind of better conditions for people to use the public space, urban ecosystems, reintroducing natural systems into cities, and resiliency. How can we design for resilient scenarios, trying to plan for the future of our cities? Regarding the social, this is also a very important pillar in our practice. We try to engage with the local community. We really believe our work is also kind of promoting and aiming equity and have the capacity to increase the equity in cities. And also we all believe that our work is educational per nature because we can embed the kind of pedagogical approach in everything that we do in the city. Regarding technology, I think we have the possibility to take advantage of today's technologies to also create better connections between people and the environment, and the possibility to create interactive environments, and also the idea of incorporating innovation as part of our design process. So I'm going to be showing some projects that illustrate these concepts, like very graphically. So regarding the environmental, as I was mentioning, the climatic comfort has been a driver of our work for the last 20 years. So this is a project in the city of Madrid where it becomes very, very hot and very, very dry during the summertime. So therefore people stay indoors. They don't want to come out because it's not so comfortable. So the idea was to incorporate this climatic comfort in the project so we could create the conditions for people to come out and use the space more intensely. So not only we're working with kind of low-tech technologies, but also we are incorporating natural systems, and the idea of atomizing water in such a dry environment makes it more appealing and more comfortable. And these are some snapshots, some activities during summertime. This is a follow-up kind of project in the city of Shanghai in China in the 2010 international exhibition. So the idea was to also kind of provide climatic comfort, but of course the conditions are completely different because the air is very, very humid and it's also very hot. So again, we were working with low tech to provide this. And one of the things that we have to incorporate is these kind of natural breezes that makes the person to feel much better. This is a different project in the city of West Palm Beach in Florida in the US. And this idea of kind of making a better connection and improving the conditions and the connections between the city and the natural systems, how to embed this kind of, again, low-tech systems that create better climatic comfort for people to come out. Because in this particular city, people do not use the public space that much during summertime because it's very humid and very uncomfortable. So we were kind of creating this catalog of possibilities with low-tech systems that can create these different kind of canopies, which are cultural and programmatic, and also creating this kind of buffer space between the city and the water, and trying to plan again, which is going to happen in the next few years, no matter what. So we have to start kind of planning for it today. This is another project that deals with the water in a different way. We are recycling the wastewaters from the building. The building is a kindergarten, and we wanted to kind of make sure that we had the water to be able to create a green lawn in front of the building and to irrigate it. And I'm saying that because the water is a big issue in the south of Europe. So unless we provided kind of recycled water, it wouldn't make any sense to have these green lawns, which consume a lot of potable water otherwise. So we work with a company that works with these macrophyte systems So here in the picture, you can see the microphyte lagoon that is absorbing the pollutants from the dirty water from the building and actually storing it, and that water is available for irrigation. And this is another project that is going to be built in the next few months, and it's also about the improvement of public space. How can we reintroduce vegetation? How can we make a pedagogical kind of hotspot in the city? And how can we create program in a space that is completely empty right now? And this is just in front of a cultural institution in Valencia in Spain. And again, the idea of education and pedagogical is also embedded into the system. Regarding technology, we have been exploring different ways of creating this interaction or interactive possibilities. So how can people customize their public space? How can people book the public space? How can people reprogram the public space? So this is a project in Malaga. It is a project for the University of Malaga, and it is a 3-kilometer boulevard in which the whole idea was to actually bring some of the activities, the academic activity that usually takes place indoors within the building, to the outside. So the question was, can we create open space or open air classrooms? And can we actually have the conditions to, to hold a lecture outside? So again, some of these systems are customizable, so people can interact with them. You can control the lighting conditions, you can control the climatic conditions. So again, the idea was to also create this kind of blend between civil society and the people that usually uses public space, but also this academic community, which is very much confined into their institutions. How can we bring or design something that it works for both? This is a project in Dordrecht in the Netherlands, and it's also about creating this playfulness. How can we also understand that sustainability should be positive and playful and educational again? So this is a carousel that, with the play and movement of the kids during the day, is producing energy that is stored in the batteries underground, and with that energy, we're producing the lighting in the nighttime. So again, we really believe that everything that we do has an impact. So we do have the power to have a positive impact in both kids, in both adults, in both improving the environment itself, but also creating the seeds and the conditions for having people more aware about their environmental issues. Also regarding technology, and we are always exploring ways of incorporating people on board, and how can we create meaningful conversations and the tools that enable these conversations to happen. So this is a software that we develop. It's a participatory software. So the platform is very intuitive, it's very simple, and we have been using it in many different places around the world. And again, the question is, how can we create something that also goes beyond the project that we are developing and stays there with the community? So the platform, as I was saying, is very simple, and the visualizations are very easy to understand. So, you could have a word cloud of the most relevant issues, or you can visualize it in different ways. So again, it's something that we're kind of exploring. And then the last component, the social, that I kind of briefly already, touched upon with the other components. We very much care about what people think. We are all the time exploring how can we incorporate people's dreams, expectations, concerns in the design of the future, especially because we're designing and we're working in the cities that they're going to be living. So it's something that we cannot avoid anymore. And we have been doing all sorts of activities. Like this is in Hamar in Norway. So the idea was like, okay, we have to do a design, but let's do a participatory process, and let us also mock up some of these solutions. So it's not just an abstract conversation around drawings and plans. So we can actually provide an experience. So we transform a parking lot into a kind of a temporary public space that drew the attention of the people, and we organized this kind of open lunch for people to attend. How can we also engage different stakeholders, the youth, different people, a mural with 2,200 post-it notes? How can we design activities specifically for kids in Honduras or Bahamas? And also, how can we create different ways of communicating ideas? Again, we cannot just use conventional tools of architects or urban designers. How can we create movies or cartoon movies? Or how can we create the stories that talk about the future of our cities? And the last word is about the process. We really envision that cities need to kind of plan processes, and we don't have them, the solution or yeah, the final kind of outcome. We really like to think that it's kind of open-ended processes in which we kind of create some kind of framework. And these are different visualizations of how we've been addressing projects that are kind of more urban or planning projects, in which we kind of have this kind of future idea of what a timeline could be for the different activities to take place. So I will leave it here. Thank you so much. I will stop sharing.
Great. Thank you so much. Your work's so impressive. You went through so much stuff there.
Maybe too much, maybe too much. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
That's wonderful. We're going to get to this in the chat, but I would first say just, it's impressive not only in the range of scales, but also in the geographies, the climates you're responding to, the programs you're adding. And I love that you're utilizing everything from like low tech, right, or passive, or these sort of really accessible opportunities. And then also technology, like challenging the interactive interfaces and things like that. It's a wonderful, as you're saying, at least catalogs of ways to use it. And so, yeah, there's so much more I want to talk about, but I'm going to open it up to the group here. I'd like to bring everyone, I'm going to ask you all to turn on your videos again, unmute. If anyone in the audience has a question, please feel free to add to the chat or comments. Again, yeah, thank you everyone for your presentations. That's wonderful. And so maybe just these projects, they all reject this false separation between people and their environment, right? That we are somehow designing outside that system or dealing with just part of a system or a singular site that ends at a property line. And I'd like everyone to chime in, but maybe again, as a place to begin, the Columbus Riverfront project is pivotal, right? And part of what I find so interesting is how instead of responding to a singular issue, the proposal looks at overlapping strategies to produce more meaningful results. And so, and again, this will open up to all of you, but I think that, I wonder if that process that then maybe led perhaps to redefining the problem itself, right? You know, how does it alter how does it alter the project? Perhaps you could expand on that, Randy, Heather, or Jason.
Heather, would you like to take this, or would you like me to?
You're the designer.
All right. Well, there were so many things that were going wrong with the riverfront over so many years that as we got into it, we got into the design process and we started talking to different factions of the community. We realized that this is our big opportunity to solve for a number of problems. And it's a very difficult site. It's only 750 feet long, and it's in a river. So that becomes just an environmental challenge with working with the state and federal government getting in there. So we knew that if we're going to jump in and do the work, we better take care of as much as we could. So we started looking at opportunities to, if we're going to work on the habitat, by taking out the Lowhead Dam and restoring fish passage and whatnot. One of the issues is we've got wetlands upstream that have been created, over the last 100+ years because the Lowhead Dam was there. How do we keep those wetlands as well? Because you take the Lowhead Dam out, the water level drops. So, we created this idea of we still needed to dam the water up, sort of, with a rock riffle. And then this other in-river structure, which we heard from a number of people in Columbus that they really wanted to have more opportunity for recreation down there. So our engineers developed a structure that would hold the water up, but also provide for the ecological, solve for the ecological issues that we have, but also solve for the recreational issues. So it sort of developed over time as these various issues popped up. We figured out how to get everything to dovetail and work together. And that's how we ended up with the solution that we have today.
Oh, great, thank you. Well, and then so let's continue with the idea that, again, one solution can do multiple things, or one solution creates a new opportunity or an opportunity. So maybe I would extend to Belinda and Jose, is that something that you would like to add to that as well?
Well, I would like I mean, just to answer quickly, is like flexibility for us is a must. And also trying, since we are also, is for us important, super important dealing with the community. And as soon as we start working with the community, even if we have a plan, for us, all the fun starts. And we start collecting all the energy, all the ideas from the citizens. And then we are responsible for introducing all that energy, all that idea into our designs to be for sure able to respond to all that energy that the city has placed into these kind of processes of engagement, but also processes that are allowing us to increase the complexity of our designs. So for us, this idea of flexibility and designs that are responding and are allowing people to customize their environments are super important.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just getting a chat in there. Well, and then so maybe to expand upon that as well, I wanted to add to that not only the sort of multi-layering, and I think what you're talking about as well is this sort of investment, right, that responded to, the energy once it's there, it becomes an opportunity, right, to maybe expand as well, to do these other things as well. And as a parallel, Rachel, within the themes of new middles, there's an interest in pluralities, in multiple timelines, in multiple perspectives, and then also in addition, multiple species, right? And so, you talked a little bit about the pollinators. I understand you're moving forward with obesity. Can you talk a little bit more about, as we start expanding what a project might be, ways you're thinking about that? How do how does that impact your design, like through this lens of that expansion?
Yeah, I think, when we're looking at properties in a city, in neighborhoods, in communities, we need to always, of course, be very cognizant about what the community wants, what the neighbors want, what those people who are going to be using the space want and need from that property. And so first and foremost, I look to engage the community and the neighborhood and the property owners and see what they're looking for in that space. But I think that's a dialogue that we can continue as designers to help the community envision what the space could be in terms of how it can not only be impactful for the community in terms of them being able to use the site for additional recreation opportunities, but also at the very same time, it can help environmental efforts in terms of creating more biodiversity, improving environmental systems. So I think, as a landscape architect, I try to always think in terms of designing systems, not only the systems for community members, for the people who will need to navigate through the space, around the space, and use the space for programming and such, but also for the animals and the plants and the water that moves through the space and all those natural systems that we need to keep in mind as well.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that generosity with it, absolutely. And so maybe to come back to all of the projects, I think there's clearly an urgency to the work that you're all doing, right? There in that response. There's science and engineering that guide it, that perhaps, that provide climatic control and mitigate, right, or amend, these words that I'm hearing. And yet I very much appreciate this focus on people having a place to hang out, right? To go for long walks, for structures with swing sets. And then, in Columbus, there's this sort of idea of that investment, right? Buildings live on because people love to use them, right? Columbus, J.R. Miller and had these core belief that a city where people have access to great education, culture, and recreation can compete with the coasts, right? So these sort of that tenets that drive maybe beyond the initial design prompts. And clearly you all understand in the work, and that people need to find joy in the spaces in order to invest in them. Maybe could you expand, and so maybe think about moments within your process again, or that guides your work, or within projects that we can just sort of expand upon the presentations you had already. No, this is like my class. Do you want me to call names, or can I ask you to come forward?
Yeah, maybe I can start. Yeah.
Please.
I mean, I think it's a pleasure to think that we are designing kind of the spaces for people to be happy. I mean, I think this is kind of a luxury, and it's so easy because sometimes in the places in which we intervene, they're so kind of deteriorated that it's very easy to get them improved. As you know, we were kind of, it was interesting to hear about the riverfront. So I think this idea of, I like again to think about the power of design. Like design can change places and therefore can change people's lives. And I think that is extremely powerful and extremely beautiful. And it makes our very hard work, because we're all, I'm assuming that everybody in this room is very hard worker. And like we are kind of sharing today all the successes and all the beautiful images, but there is a lot of hard work and there is effort and there is suffering, a little bit of suffering in every single project. But it makes sense because I really like to think that, yeah, we're creating a public space where there isn't right now one, or we're creating these possibilities for people who maybe they don't feel they belong to this public space, or they didn't have the opportunity to come out, or I don't know, they don't have even the basic infrastructure and they can use it right now. So I think, again, it's not only about playfulness, it's about, we cannot take for granted that the basic public space is always there. Like in so many contexts and environments, this is still missing, even if we are assuming that it's there. So, and then of course, everything that is upgrading is very much welcome. So, and then the other thing I would say is like, regarding participation, we all, of course, embrace it. That doesn't mean that it's not challenging. Like for instance, in the project in Norway, there was a little bit of resistance because we were transforming a parking space into a public space. And even if that is very obviously better, there is resistance. So this idea of piloting projects and trying to mock it up, to show it, to give the people the possibility to experience it before the final design is done or before the final implementation has been done, I think it's also kind of, it creates better opportunities to kind of enhance the conversation. I'll leave it there.
Yes, I would add just one thing, which is, we are talking about playfulness, and Belinda also plays on top of the table also conflict. I'm quoting David Harvey. He is always talking about conflict is part also of a participatory process. Why? Because people care about their urban environments. And if we are in part of those processes of transformation, opening the stage for them to be listened to, to creating projects and processes and systems in which they are included, this is something healthy for the city. This is a way to include them into those processes.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, right? Not only the changing nature of civic space, but this potential, and I appreciate that in your work as well. And maybe even more important during these times of a double pandemic and these, the idea that they are making connections for people who might feel isolated, or engagement for people who seek justice, right? I feel like there's this new potential, and those classrooms you had, right? There's maybe more of a need for these types of outdoor classrooms that are totally embedded with technology. So I think that's wonderful. And I would like to expand, because I think it does come back to what Kate was saying about how people love their landscapes, want to love their landscapes, and that is something to design for. So I want to bring it back to, Brandy, Heather, Rachel, Jason as well. Can you add to that from your perspectives as well? And as well, remember, you are the eyes and ears on the ground for Ecosistema Urbano and all the Miller Prize, all our participants. So.
Well, I think from our standpoint on the riverfront, the People Trail is a very well-used public amenity throughout the city. And obviously with everything that's going on with COVID, there are a lot more people out there. There are a lot of people walking their dogs and just enjoying the outdoors. The issue with the riverfront right now is it's not accessible. And what we were challenged to do through our process was, how do we not only make this connection, but make it universally designed so people of all abilities can use it. And people can get to the river in Millrace Park, that's just north of our site, but it's not really an ADA situation where just anybody can get to it. You'd have to go down the boat ramp. we've actually created 2 locations along the riverfront where anyone can get in and enjoy the river as an amenity. So we definitely solved the number of technical issues, but we had to try to make this as easily accessed and usable for people throughout our community. So it's kind of exciting to see how all of that came together.
I think what's also interesting is that through this process with, like Randy stated, the technical issues, securing the 100-year-old sanitary sewer and providing, ADA compliance and then the requirements of the regulatory agency at the same time. And as our different iterations of the project move forward, we were coming up with neat and unique ideas for everyone to engage with the river. So, everyone's mind's eye goes to a different spot when you say you want to engage with the river. Some really want to touch it and feel it and, dip their toes in it, where others have a more laid back, step back approach where they'd like to see it from afar and just enjoy the noise and the smell and things, just being out in nature from a distance. And so through our different designs, we've been able to provide all of these different ways to engage with the river.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I want to add to that is the fact that this design, it's unique for Indiana, but I don't think it's necessarily kind of a scary notion for the city to take on. The fact that people right now go down to that dam, which is they're risking life and limb whenever they go down there, just automatically it demonstrates the appeal that the space has to be able to utilize a river as public space. I think that's a great concept that when this is completed, the demonstration will be proved that this is going to be a success.
That's good. That's great to know. And I walked on that dam. I didn't realize I was in that much danger, so it's good to know. Rachel, if you'd like to add to that, although I also did receive a question, so if you want to first respond, and then I'll add that.
Sure. Yeah, I would say the idea of connection is really important, I think, in the work we're trying to do with the pollinator parks. In my mind, it's really about giving people more opportunities to connect with our natural world around us. And in this time, in this pandemic and a time when we're losing a lot of connections, I think it's growing importance. And since we've begun this project just a few years ago and really started to get it moving, I've heard from a lot of people about how, just a lot of people have been inspired and motivated and excited to share pictures with me of look at this insect I saw in my yard, and just people having these moments where they're connecting with nature in new ways. And I think that can be really impactful, not only for our own health and well-being, but to make us realize the importance of the the environment around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me share this question regarding Pollinator Park. What is the context and scale of this effort? For example, if there is a 1 acre of replanted flood areas with trees, what is the metric impact to help clean the air and other improvements? Also, if we have beehives planted, what is the impact if there are 5 beehive boxes? What is the metric impact in terms of how many acres do they fly in and other positive factors? If we can pull out the whiteboard if we need to. Go ahead.
I would say that, just to give you an idea of context and scale, what we've started with, our first site that I showed is about 3.5 acres in size. And the Blackwell Park, the second site that I shared images of, is about 13 acres in size. And we're continuing to add on, small plots here and there in other parks that may be just a few thousand square feet. So really in terms of the overall size, we're continuing to grow. Or actually looking at new sites right now where we might be able to install native plantings and plantings that attract pollinators this next year. I think you raise a very good point. It's important that we start to track metrics, and that's something that we're just really in the beginning stages of, to be honest. I've been having conversations with professors in entomology and biology and ecology, and starting to understand how we can use academia to help us find ways to create these metrics and keep track of what we're seeing in terms of the changes to these parks in terms of biodiversity. So I agree that's going to be very important as we move forward and as we look at more spaces. In terms of bees, we're also, really looking at creating more habitat for our native bees. We haven't installed any bee hives yet. We've really looked at focusing on native bees for the beginning of this project, but that might be something we'll look into. And I know there's been some work in that already with Exhibit Columbus, with creating some designs for that. So that might be something that we can work with designers on, and then work with our local experts in helping us to create those metrics so we can really evaluate the impact over time.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Well, and so maybe I just take a moment to, if there's any final comments before, Anne is here with us as well. So we fun. Maybe I will say, yeah, I will thank you all so much, but then if you wanted to say a quick word to each of you as well to finish up.
Yeah, this was a great conversation today. I really appreciated all of your perspectives. I'm really proud of the work that you're doing locally. And Belinda and Jose, I'm just so excited to see once you get into the community, how you respond to Columbus and your site. So thank you all for participating today. And thanks, Janice, for moderating as well. Really appreciate it. You did a great job. Thanks to our team from Exhibit Columbus, Mimi Zeiger, Iker Gill, Ben Valentine, Hadley Fruits, and Richard McCoy. Thanks to you in the audience for tuning in today. For those who missed the thematic conversation that was streamed earlier in the week through Dezeen, it was fantastic. Please visit our website, exhibitcolumbus.org, to watch that program. I will be hosting our next thematic conversation, Arts and Community, on Tuesday, October 13th. I have the great good fortune to moderate a discussion between architect and urban designer Paula Aguirre, artist, writer, researcher Matthew Fluharty, and artist and design strategist Dean Nichols, who will talk about how art spaces and cultural organizations are shaping the future of the Middle. Then on Thursday, October 15th, please join us here again at noon for the Columbus Conversation featuring J. Irwin and Xenia S. Miller Prize recipients Future Firm and Sam Jacobs Studio, in discussion with Jaden Darnell, Austin Lewis, Jessica Schnepp, and Kate Thomas, in a conversation that highlights the way grassroots creative networks, Friends of the Crump Theater, and Nomad are creating platforms that foster creativity as community assets. Our moderator for that conversation will be former Miller Prize recipient Brian E. Roberts. The music during our program today was created by Ryan Lott and was generously provided by This Is Meru. Again, you can find details about all of our upcoming talks at our website, exhibitcolumbus.org. Join the conversation online and follow us on social media to get updates and to learn more. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great day.